Chapter 27. Giraffes and Zebras. There were several giraffes, and they required a lot of looking at. When you are only a tiny girl, as Kitty was, it takes quite a time to glance from the hoofs up. 4 very long legs, across a patchy Noah's Ark body, and up a very long neck to a tiny head, with ears and horns, and 2 large, melty eyes. And when the giraffe puts his tongue out, and you have to look at that too, and you see it is black, well, it means a minute at least before you can get breath enough to ask questions. "Why?" began Kitty, but Uncle was talking to Mother. "Yes, it is a neck, isn't it? Suppose he wore collars." Then Kitty succeeded in breaking in. "Why does he have such a long neck? Is it for children to ride on?" "I'm afraid not. He's just built that way. And you'd find giraffe riding rather trying, though I believe you can do it on roundabouts at country fairs. The giraffe, though he seems to shuffle along like a camel, can generally outrun a horse. And when he comes to rough or broken ground, he leaps and hops in the most wonderful manner. And if you happen to slip off and get a kick from him, well, you wouldn't want another. His long neck is very useful to him, because he is a dainty feeder, and prefers the young fresh shoots at the top of the acacia trees, on which he principally lives, to the leaves at the bottom. If you gave him some grass now, it's against the rules, and you mustn't. He would eat all the young parts, and leave the coarse stems, just as we leave the stalks of asparagus. His tongue is often 18 inches long, and very flexible. He can contract the tip almost to the size of a pencil, and use it like a pair of pincers or fingers. Giraffes will sometimes amuse themselves by pulling hairs from the manes or tails of their companions, and this is done entirely by the tongue. "I couldn't do it," said Joan, putting out her tongue. "And I wouldn't if I could, it's horrid." "I can do it with my fingers, though," said Phil, and gave her hair a twitch. "Don't," said Harold. It was almost the only word he had spoken since they came in. He did not like to see Joan pulled about. Peace was restored by Uncle asking, "Do you like his colour scheme?" "What's that?" said Joan. "Well, his patches and general appearance. You see, he lives almost entirely in the forest, and the dark and light splashes are in perfect keeping with his surroundings, so that he is not easily seen. It's the story of the leopard over again. In fact, he is called in old natural history books a camel leopard. Really he belongs to quite a distinct class, though more nearly related to the deer. Look at that one stooping. See how awkward and ungainly he is as he stretches his legs. He reminds you of a stout old gentleman trying to touch his toes. But when his head is erect, he is almost a model of grace. That shows he is meant to be a browser rather than a grazer, as the camel is. In one sense, he is like the camel, in that he can go without water for a very long time. Indeed, though it is not generally known, he can easily beat the camel in that respect. For he can exist for whole months without drinking." "I should like a rug made from his skin," said Mother. "No good. It would be much too like linoleum, though it would certainly be handsome. The colours vary from rich chestnut to lemon fawn, with a tendency to get darker as the animal ages. Though you would not think it, the hide is as thick as the hippo's, about 1.5 inches. In the undergrowth of the African jungle there are frightful thorns at every pace. But with that thick skin the giraffe is never concerned with them. The most frequent use of the hide is to make it into whips or jamboks, but in old days the Arabs used it for shields. How tall is he, Uncle? Asked Phil. Generally about 18 or 19 feet, or 3 times the height of a fairly tall soldier. Indeed, the giraffe is easily the tallest living animal, though in ages long past there were many taller, and indeed bigger in every respect. That reminds me, some years ago it was discovered by a great traveller, Sir Harry Johnston, that the giraffe has a relative of whose existence no one in Europe had previously been aware. It is called the okapi, and looks somewhat like a long-necked mule with a zebra's stripes over its legs and part of its body. The zoo very occasionally gets a specimen, but they don't take kindly to captivity, and they can never keep an okapi long. At the moment there isn't a live one on the premises. It lives in the dense forest and is rarely seen. They passed along and had a look at the tapirs, with their funny snouts, and at some very pretty wild asses. Then they reached the zebras, and Kitty clapped her hands with delight. "I'd love to ride on one," she exclaimed. "They wouldn't throw me off like the giraffes would." "I'm not so sure, young woman." "I could ride one," said Joan. She had been to a circus once, and when the show was over Dad had taken her behind the scenes, and the man had actually lifted her onto the pony's back. After that Joan was always sure she could ride anything, though Phil sniffed when she said so. "They are beautiful creatures," said Mother, "but I have always understood they cannot be tamed." "People used to say so," replied Uncle. "It is not easy, certainly, but it is often done." A famous millionaire used to drive about in a carriage with a team of 4, and in the Transvaal they have been used for public coach services. They are really wild creatures, however, and for my part I am content to admire them as they are. "There seem to be several kinds," said Wally. "Yes, there are the true or mountain zebras, now very rare, and Greevy and Burchell's zebras, named after the people who first described them. Greavy's is the one with the narrowest and most numerous stripes." "It is the most handsome," said Mother. "I agree. They are all very shy animals and wander in herds, though they can run so quickly, especially on hard and stony ground. They have much more in common with asses than with horses." "So have you—" The words were whispered, but there was no mistaking them. Everyone looked round in horror. Phil blushed guiltily. I didn't mean you, Uncle," he stammered. "Of course I didn't. I was talking to Harold."